Commander Zyl'ax's career ended the moment the human instructor set fire to the Kaldrith Empire's sacred battle standard in front of his entire command class. 1 second, he was mid-lecture on the sanctity of military symbols, gesturing toward the holographic displays of honored flags from across the known galaxy. The next, Emma Johnson walked through the door carrying the crimson and gold banner of his homeworld, the actual physical flag, not a replica, and calmly placed it on his desk. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, pulling a small metal lighter from her jacket pocket. Zyl'ax's throat sacs contracted. 40 elite officer cadets from 12 species sat frozen in their seats, watching the human instructor flick the lighter once, twice. The flame caught on the third try. "Don't," Zyl'ax managed. According to YouTube analytics, 98% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, she touched the flame to the flag's edge. The ancient silk caught immediately, fire racing across fabric that had flown over 7 successful planetary conquests, been carried by his great-grandfather in the Kreshvul campaign, survived 3 assassination attempts on Kaldrith Prime's imperial palace. The smell of burning heritage filled the lecture hall as gold thread melted into crimson ash. Every cadet surged to their feet. The Kaldrith students' scales rippled with shock-pale colors. A Vexian officer candidate's mandibles clacked in rapid distress signals. Someone triggered the emergency alert. Zyl'ax heard the distant wail of Academy security protocols, activating 3 floors down. Emma Johnson stood there, hands clasped behind her back, watching the flag burn with the expression of someone waiting for a pot of coffee to finish brewing. "You." Zyl'ax's voice emerged as a hiss, his species' ancestral combat tone. 30 years teaching at the Galactic Military Academy. 30 years of perfect record of producing the finest officers in 12 sectors. Decorated veteran of 4 wars. Member of the Imperial Honor Guard. And this human just committed what amounted to a declaration of war against his entire civilization. His claws extended involuntarily. Every instinct screamed at him to remove this threat, this insult made flesh. The flag crumbled to ash on his desk, the last ember dying as he stared at the woman who'd just ended everything he'd built. "That was a 3,000-year-old battle standard," he said quietly, the words scraping out like broken glass. "Do you understand what you've done?" "Yep." Emma met his gaze without flinching. "Same thing you did last Tuesday." His throat sacs pulsed in confusion. "I've done no such—" "Actually, you did it twice last week." She pulled a datapad from her other pocket, tapped the screen. "Want to see the recordings?" The lecture hall doors burst open. Commander Zyl'ax, the Academy's head administrator, rushed in with 4 security officers. His elongated cranium ridges were flushed deep purple, the Zentari equivalent of panic. "What in the name of—" Zyl'ax stopped, staring at the ash on the desk. His translator stuttered, trying to process several untranslatable Zentari oath words simultaneously. "Please, tell me that's not what I think it is." "That," Zyl'ax said, his voice dangerously level, "was my family's honor flag. This human has committed an act of cultural desecration that requires immediate—" "I used the same lighter you used on mine," Emma interrupted. She sounded conversational, almost friendly, like she was discussing the weather. "Well, technically, you didn't use a lighter. You used the edge of your desk to tear it. Then you wiped down your podium with it. Then you threw it in the recycler." Silence crashed through the room. "I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about," Zyl'ax said. Emma tapped her datapad again. A holographic projection bloomed above the burnt remains, footage from 3 different angles showing Zyl'ax's advanced tactical command course from the previous week. In the recording, he gestured dismissively toward a blue flag with white stars hanging on the wall. "Human symbols," recording Zyl'ax said with clear disdain, "represent a species with no warrior tradition, no concept of military honor. Observe." Recording Zyl'ax reached up, yanked the flag down, and used it to wipe dust from his podium before tossing it into the waste disposal unit. Emma froze the image. "That was my country's flag, Commander," Same one my grandfather carried at Normandy, my uncle carried in Vietnam, my brother carried in the Middle East, and I carried in the Pacific conflict, 6 generations of military service, but sure, no warrior tradition. Every eye in the room turned to Zyl'ax, his scales flushed with the gray-green of profound shame before anger surged back, darkening them to near black. That's completely different. Human conflicts were primitive skirmishes, nothing compared to... So it's okay to burn my sacred symbols because you think humans aren't worthy of respect. Emma's voice remained calm, but something in her eyes made Zyl'ax's combat instincts flare. Interesting position for someone who just spent 40 minutes lecturing about the universal sanctity of military heritage. Commander Zyl'ax looked between them, his translator working overtime on what were probably more Zentari curse words. Emma, you burned a Caldrith Imperial battle standard. This is a court-martial offense. This is possibly an interstellar incident. Only if Commander Zyl'ax files charges, Emma said. She turned back to Zyl'ax, and he saw something in her expression that made his throat sacs contract again. Not fear, but recognition. The look of someone who'd been in actual combat. So here's your choice, Commander. You can have me arrested for desecrating your flag, which means admitting that flags are sacred and filing charges against yourself for doing the same to mine. Or, she let the word hang in the air. Or, Zyl'ax forced out. Or you can sit down and we can have a conversation about why you think human military history isn't worth your respect. Emma smiled, and it wasn't a friendly expression. Your call, Commander. But choose fast, because every second you stand there deciding is another second your students watch you figure out whether your pride is worth more than your principles. Commander Zyl'ax, Zyl'ax said, his voice razor-sharp with controlled fury. I demand this human's immediate arrest and court-martial. She has committed an act of deliberate cultural desecration in front of 40 witnesses. This is not negotiable. Emma didn't move. Commander, you should probably sit down. We need to talk about your teaching methods. My teaching methods? Zyl'ax's scales rippled with indignation. You just burned... I've been observing your classes for 3 weeks, Emma interrupted, still in that maddeningly calm tone. Cultural liaison duties, remember, making sure human integration into the academy runs smoothly. She tapped her data pad. Want to know what I found? She didn't wait for an answer. The holographic display shifted, showing a montage of classroom footage. Zyl'ax watched himself handle flags from dozens of species, the triple moon banner of the Vexian collective, carefully folded and placed on its stand. The crystalline standard of the Metherian Empire, positioned with reverent precision, the living fabric emblem of the Eutheri, maintained in its preservation field. Every single culture's sacred symbols, Emma narrated, treated with appropriate reverence and respect. You even cited specific honor protocols for handling them. Very thorough, very professional. The display shifted again. Except these. The new footage showed Zyl'ax's treatment of human symbols over the past 3 weeks, using the American flag as a drop cloth while cleaning his desk, tossing the UN banner onto the floor as a footmat while lecturing, wadding up the Earth Federation standard to wipe down his podium controls. In one particularly damning clip, he used a display of human military medals as target practice for his pointer, laughing as he knocked them off the shelf. The Chinese flag, the Russian flag, the EU banner, the African Union standard. Emma listed them off like she was reading a shopping list. All treated like garbage. Literally, you threw half of them in the recycler. Zyl'ax's throat sacs tightened. Several cadets had their data pads out now recording. This was spreading beyond the room already. He could see the glowing indicators of active network uploads. That's because humans have no honor culture, he said, forcing his voice steady. No warrior tradition worth respecting. Your species spent millennia fighting each other over primitive resources. You barely qualified for Galactic Council admission. Your military heritage consists of undisciplined mob violence compared to the structured warfare of actual warrior races. Interesting theory. Emma's smile could have cut steel. Let's test it. She pulled up another recording, this one from this morning, showing her own entry into his classroom. The timestamp showed she'd taken the Caldrith Imperial flag from the Academy's cultural display vault 47 minutes ago, logged properly under her liaison credentials. I burned your flag, Emma said slowly, like she was explaining something to a child, using the exact same protocols you used on mine. I grabbed it without ceremony, like you did. I used it as a prop in front of students, like you did. I destroyed it casually while maintaining eye contact, like you did. She gestured at the ash on his desk. I even used similar accelerant properties. Your desk's edge-ripping fabric, my lighter burning it. Functionally identical levels of disrespect. Commander Zyl'ax made a choking sound. His cranium ridges had gone from purple to a sickly yellow-green. Emma, you can't possibly think this justifies. Oh, I'm not justifying anything, Emma said cheerfully. I'm demonstrating equality. See, Commander Zyl'ax here has a choice now. She turned back to Zyl'ax, and he felt the trap snap shut around him like a tactical pincer movement. If you demand justice for your flag, Emma said, you're admitting that flags are sacred, that symbols matter, that cultural heritage deserves respect, regardless of whether you personally approve of the culture. She paused, which means human symbols deserve that same respect. Which means you committed the exact same offense against me that I just committed against you. That's not, Zyl'ax started. Or, Emma continued over him, you can argue that your flag doesn't matter, that it's just cloth, that I did nothing wrong, in which case you can't file charges, and we all learned a valuable lesson about cultural relativism. Her expression hardened. But you don't get to have it both ways. You don't get to claim your symbols are sacred while treating mine like trash. The lecture hall had gone absolutely silent. Zyl'ax could feel 40 pairs of eyes on him, feel the weight of 3 decades of reputation balanced on whatever he said next. His pride screamed at him to demand her arrest, to see her punished for this humiliation. But his tactical training, the same training that had kept him alive through 4 wars and earned him every decoration on his chest, saw the battlefield clearly. If he pressed charges, he condemned himself. If he didn't, he admitted she was right. You planned this, he said quietly. Oh, absolutely. Emma took a sip from her coffee thermos that she'd apparently been carrying this whole time. How had he not noticed the coffee? Very carefully. 3 weeks of documentation, proper flag requisition from the vault, witnesses from 12 species, and multiple recording angles. I'm thorough when I'm making a point. Commander Zyl'ax looked like he wanted to crawl into the nearest airlock. There has to be a way to resolve this that doesn't result in either court-martials or interstellar incidents. There is, Emma said. She looked directly at Zyl'ax. 2 options, Commander. Option 1, you issue a public apology to me and all human personnel for your disrespect of our military symbols. Acknowledge that human heritage deserves equal treatment. Zyl'ax's scales flushed dark with suppressed rage. 30 years. 30 years of teaching, of command respect, of earned authority. To apologize to a human in front of his students. Option 2, he managed. Public debate, Emma said. Next class session. You and me. Topic: whether humanity has a warrior tradition worth respecting. She smiled. You keep saying we don't. I think the evidence suggests otherwise. Let's present our cases to your students and let them decide. Zyl'ax stopped. A debate, not an apology, not an admission of guilt, a chance to prove his position, to demonstrate to everyone that his assessment of humanity was correct, a chance to salvage his pride. 3 days, he said. I need time to prepare. Done. Emma extended her hand in the human gesture. May the best argument win, Commander. Zyl'ax stared at her hand, then at her face. She was still smiling, still calm, like she'd just set fire to his entire worldview and was waiting patiently for him to notice. He didn't shake her hand. 3 days, he repeated, and then we'll see exactly how much your species' history is worth. Emma's smile widened. I'm looking forward to it. 3 days later, the lecture hall couldn't hold everyone who wanted to watch. Zyl'ax stood at his podium, watching cadets pack into every available seat, while senior officers lined the back wall. Admiral Talana of the Zentari Strategic Command, General Vex Thul from the HFY Defense Forces, Commander Zyl'ax representing the Vexian Collective Military Academy. Word had spread through the entire installation, probably through the entire sector by now. His scales rippled with satisfaction. Good. Let them all watch him dismantle the humans' pretensions. He'd spent 3 days preparing. His presentation contained 47 holographic slides detailing humanity's laughably short military history, their primitive weapons development, their fractured political structures that prevented any coherent warrior culture from forming. Every argument was documented, cross-referenced, mathematically sound. Emma Johnson walked in carrying a single datapad and her omnipresent coffee thermos. That was it. No presentation materials, no visual aids, no prepared documentation visible. She caught his eye, raised the thermos in a mock salute, and took a seat in the front row. Commander Zyl'ax stood at the center of the hall, his cranium ridges still that sickly yellow-green they'd been for 3 days straight. This debate will proceed under Academic Protocol 7. Commander Zyl'ax presents first, followed by Instructor Johnson's rebuttal. Time limit, 30 minutes each. The purpose is educational discourse, not... He glanced nervously at the ash stains still visible on Zyl'ax's desk. Not conflict escalation. Zyl'ax activated his first slide. The topic: whether humanity possesses a warrior tradition worthy of respect and study. I argue they do not. For the next 28 minutes, he systematically destroyed every possible claim to human military credibility. Their spacefaring history spanned barely 2 centuries. The Caldrith had been exploring space for 12 times that long. Their involvement in galactic conflicts was minimal: 3 minor peacekeeping operations and 1 planetary defense action. Their military technology borrowed heavily from other species' designs. In conclusion, Zyl'ax finished, his voice resonating with confidence, humanity represents a young species still learning the most basic principles of organized warfare. To suggest they have anything to teach races who've perfected military doctrine over millennia is, frankly, absurd. Polite applause from several Caldrith cadets, thoughtful nods from others. Emma stood up, still holding her coffee. She didn't walk to the podium, just stood there in front of her seat, looking up at him. Quick question, she said. How many wars has your species fought? Zyl'ax blinked. That's documented in my presentation. The Caldrith Empire has engaged in 47 formally declared military conflicts over our 3,000-year recorded history. 47 wars in 3,000 years, Emma repeated. She took a sip of coffee. Okay, we've documented over 10,000 distinct military conflicts in recorded human history. The lecture hall went dead silent. That's, Zyl'ax's translator stuttered, that's impossible. Your recorded history only spans approximately 5,000 years. That would mean 2 wars per year on average, Emma said, sometimes more. Sometimes we managed a few decades of peace before somebody started shooting again. But yeah, 10,000 is conservative. We stopped counting the small ones. Admiral Talana leaned forward in her seat. Several cadets had their datapads out, frantically searching human historical databases. Quantity is not quality, Zyl'ax said, recovering his composure. Your wars were primitive, disorganized, fought with crude weapons over... Let me stop you there. Emma set down her coffee thermos with deliberate care. You're right that our wars were different from yours. You know why? Because we never had peace long enough to develop honor-based warfare. She started pacing, and something in her movement made Zyl'ax think of predators circling. Your species fought 47 wars in 3,000 years, Emma said, which means between each war you had an average of... 64 years of peace? Time to recover, time to formalize rules, time to develop honor codes and proper challenge protocols and structured military traditions. She turned to face the entire lecture hall. Humans didn't get that luxury. Every generation fought. Every generation had to adapt, innovate, survive against enemies who wanted them dead. We didn't have time for honor. We needed victory. We didn't have energy for glory. We needed efficiency. Her voice hardened. We didn't develop warrior traditions. We developed survivor traditions. There's a difference. Survivor traditions, Zyl'ax repeated, loading the words with contempt. You mean barbarism? War without rules, without dignity. I mean combined arms doctrine, Emma interrupted. Coordinating ground forces, air support, naval assets, and artillery in real-time integrated operations. Does the Galactic Military use that? Zyl'ax's throat sacs contracted. We coordinate between service branches, yes, but guerrilla warfare. Asymmetric tactics, turning your enemy's strengths into weaknesses, using terrain and timing instead of matching force with force. Familiar with those concepts? Cowardly tactics, Zyl'ax said, refusing to meet your enemy in honorable battle. Psychological operations, Emma continued, counting on her fingers. Total war doctrine, destroying an enemy's capacity to wage war, not just their military. Deep strategic deception, special operations forces, unconventional warfare, electronic warfare integration. Do you want me to keep going? Because I've got about 200 more concepts we developed, and I'm betting you don't use 90% of them. General Vex Thule stood up from the back row. Instructor Johnson, are you suggesting that humanity's chaotic military history somehow makes you more advanced than species with structured warrior traditions? I'm suggesting, Emma said, that we learned different lessons. You learned how to fight honorably. We learned how to win. She paused. There's a reason the Galactic Council asked humans to design their new tactical doctrine for contested zone operations. It's not because we're primitive. Zyl'ax's scales flushed dark. One consulting contract doesn't. It's because, Emma said quietly, when your structured warfare ran into the HFY insurgency 12 years ago, you lost 40,000 soldiers in 8 months following honor-based engagement protocols. Human advisors restructured your approach using asymmetric doctrine. You ended the conflict in 6 weeks with fewer than 200 casualties. The silence in the lecture hall felt like vacuum pressure. The HFY insurgency was an aberration, Zyl'ax said, but his voice had lost its certainty. An unconventional scenario that required... Every war is unconventional once it starts, Emma said. That's what you don't understand. We don't have 10,000 military conflicts because we're barbaric. We have 10,000 conflicts because we survived 10,000 attempts to destroy us, and every single time we adapted faster than whoever was trying to kill us. She picked up her coffee thermos again. So yeah, Commander, you're absolutely right that we don't have a warrior tradition like yours. What we have is worse, she smiled. We have a winning tradition, and we earned every bit of it the hard way. Admiral T'Lana had her datapad out now, stylus moving rapidly across the screen. Commander Zyl'ax was accessing human military databases, her mandibles clicking in what Zyl'ax recognized as Vexian concentration patterns. Even the cadets had stopped pretending to be neutral observers. They were learning, absorbing, questioning everything Zyl'ax had taught them. War without honor, he said, forcing steel back into his voice, is just murder. You're describing systematic brutality, not military excellence. You think efficiency justifies... War without victory, Emma cut him off, is just dying stylishly, and I'd rather be a living murderer than an honorable corpse. She tilted her head. Commander, what's your most famous battle victory? The one you're most proud of? Zyl'ax's scales rippled with the colors of remembered glory. The Battle of Keldris Station. I commanded the Third Fleet against the Metherian Expeditionary Force. A textbook engagement. Proper challenge protocols. 3 days notice as per the Accord of Vexthul. Formal declaration of... You gave them 3 days warning? Emma's eyebrows rose. Before attacking? Of course. The honor codes require... And you announced your fleet composition? Told them exactly what ships you were bringing, what weapons systems, what tactical formations? Standard procedure for formal military engagement, Zyl'ax said stiffly. Both sides declare their forces, agree on neutral observation protocols, and then you attacked from the expected vector? Emma's voice held genuine disbelief. The one they knew you'd be coming from because you filed it with the Galactic Military Commission? The Keldris approach vector, yes, it's the standard. Zyl'ax stopped, seeing the expression on her face. What? Commander, in human military doctrine, what you just described would be classified as tactical suicide. The words hung in the air like explosive decompression. I won that battle, Zyl'ax said slowly. Decisive victory, minimal casualties, the Matharian force withdrew in good order after... How long did the battle last? 17 days of sustained engagement. Emma pulled up her data pad, fingers dancing across the screen. Okay, let me show you some human examples. December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor. Japanese forces attack the American Pacific Fleet with zero warning on a Sunday morning when most personnel were off duty. Crippled the entire fleet in 2 hours. A holographic display bloomed showing aircraft carriers and burning ships. June 6, 1944, D-Day. Allies convinced Germany they were attacking at Calais, then hit Normandy instead. Massive strategic deception, complete surprise, established beachhead in 36 hours that ended up winning the entire war. More images, landing craft, beaches, tactical maps with deception arrows. May 1940. Blitzkrieg through France. Germans went through the impassable Ardennes forest that France assumed was a natural barrier. War everyone thought would take years was over in 6 weeks. Zyl'ax stared at the tactical breakdowns. These are ambushes, deceptions. You attacked enemies who weren't prepared, who weren't expecting us to actually try to win, Emma said. Yeah, that was kind of the point. But the casualties, Zyl'ax protested, the civilian populations caught in those attacks, were tragic, Emma said quietly. War is tragic, Commander. But you want to know what's more tragic? Dragging out a 17-day honorable battle when you could have ended it in hours. She leaned against the desk. How many died at Keldris Station? The engagement resulted in approximately 4,200 military casualties across both forces, Zyl'ax said. Pride crept back into his voice. Very restrained for a battle of that. Pearl Harbor, 403 casualties. War effectively decided in the Pacific Theater. D-Day, 4,114 Allied casualties, but it broke the Atlantic Wall and led to Germany's surrender within a year, saving millions of lives by ending the war faster. Emma's eyes were hard now. Your 17-day honorable battle killed more people than our surprise attack that changed the course of an entire planetary war. General Vexthul stood up. Instructor Johnson, are you seriously suggesting that deception and surprise attacks are superior to regulated, honorable warfare? I'm not suggesting it, General. I'm proving it. Emma tapped her data pad, sending data to every screen in the room. Human military casualty ratios versus galactic average over the past 50 years. Our conflicts end 60% faster with 40% fewer total casualties, military and civilian combined. The numbers blazed on every display. Zyl'ax felt his throat sacs constrict as he read them. They were undeniable. You fight without allowing your enemy dignity, he said, the words coming out hollow. You strike from shadows, you deceive, you give no chance for... We gave our enemies efficiency, Emma said. You know what the Japanese commander at Pearl Harbor said years later when he was asked about the attack? He said he was grateful that America ended the war with atomic weapons instead of invading mainland Japan. which would have killed tens of millions more people in a prolonged ground campaign. She straightened up, and her voice carried to every corner of the hall. We don't fight for honor, Commander. We fight to protect what matters, and we do it by winning as fast as possible, because every day a war continues is another day people die. Those who survived our wars thanked us for ending them quickly instead of dragging them out for glory. Zyl'ax's claws scraped against his podium. He stared at the casualty comparisons, at the timeline analyses, at the brutal mathematical proof that everything he'd built his career on was not wrong exactly, but incomplete, dangerously, fatally incomplete. The Keldris engagement, he said slowly, is considered one of my finest achievements. 17 days of tactical excellence, both sides adhering to proper military protocols. Could have been over in 6 hours if you'd actually tried to win instead of trying to look good winning, Emma said. She didn't sound cruel, just matter of fact. How many of those 4,000 casualties died after day 3, Commander? After the outcome was already decided, but you were following proper withdrawal protocols? He'd never calculated that number. He didn't want to calculate it now. You're saying, Zyl'ax heard himself say, that I killed my own soldiers for the sake of honor. I'm saying you spent 3 decades teaching the next generation of officers to do the same thing, Emma replied. And maybe, just maybe, humans have something to teach about keeping more of them alive. The lecture hall had gone absolutely silent again, but this time it wasn't the silence of shock. It was the silence of paradigms cracking like hull plating under sustained fire. Admiral T'Lana cleared her throat. Instructor Johnson, I believe the Galactic Military Command would be very interested in a more comprehensive presentation of human tactical doctrine. Emma picked up her coffee thermos, took a long sip. I'm available for consulting, she said. My rates are reasonable, and I promise not to burn any more flags. She glanced at Zyl'ax, unless someone really deserves it. The silence stretched across the lecture hall like the moment before hull breach, that endless second where everyone knows everything is about to change. Admiral T'Lana set down her stylus with deliberate precision. Instructor Johnson, I have a question. Emma looked up from her coffee. Shoot. Why haven't humans shared these doctrines with the broader galactic military community? T'Lana's cranium ridges had shifted to a deep, thoughtful blue. You've been part of the Galactic Council for 37 years. You've had ample opportunity to— You never asked, Emma said simply. You assumed we were barbaric and had nothing to teach. She gestured around the room. Every species in this academy has contributed to the curriculum. Kaldrith honor warfare, Vexian swarm tactics, Zentari strategic planning, Metherian logistics. Know how many human courses are in the catalog? Silence. 1, Emma said. Introduction to Human Cultural History. Not military history, not tactical doctrine. Just enough to explain why we eat with metal sticks and shake hands funny. She shrugged. You can't teach people who think they already know everything about you. Zyl'ax stood frozen at his podium, staring at the data still glowing on every screen. His claws gripped the edge hard enough to leave scratches. The flag, he said finally, his voice barely audible. You burned it to make me feel what I'd done. Every head turned toward him. No, Emma said quietly. I burned it to show you that symbols mean nothing compared to the lives they represent. She pulled something from her jacket, a small data chip, and held it up. The flag I burned was a synthetic replica. I requisitioned it from the Academy Fabrication Lab specifically for this demonstration. Cost about 40 credits. Her expression softened slightly. I would never destroy the real thing, Commander. That flag survived actual battles. It meant something to the people who carried it. Zyl'ax's throat sacs pulsed irregularly. But your disrespect of human symbols, Emma continued, wasn't about cloth or thread. It was about dismissing real human military sacrifice. Every flag you threw away represented soldiers who died protecting what they loved. You treated their legacy like garbage because you decided, without ever studying our history, that we weren't worth your respect. She walked toward him slowly, and he found he couldn't look away from her eyes. That's what I was teaching you, Emma said. Not revenge, not humiliation, just perspective. Zyl'ax's legs felt unsteady. 30 years. 30 years of teaching, of certainty, of knowing exactly how the galaxy worked and where every species fit in the grand hierarchy of military competence. 30 years of being catastrophically, fatally wrong. He drew himself up to full height, scales shifting to the deep blue of formal military protocol. The movement was instinctive, drilled into him since youth. "Instructor Johnson," he said, his voice carrying across the hall. "I apologize to you, to all human military personnel, and to the memory of those who served under the symbols I desecrated. My actions were," his translator struggled with the standard term, "inexcusable. I allowed pride to blind me to truth, and in doing so, dishonored both my position and my students." He turned to face the entire lecture hall, addressing the cadets and senior officers alike. "I request permission to restructure my curriculum to include comprehensive human military history and tactical doctrine. My students deserve instruction from those who have actually earned the right to teach warfare." He looked back at Emma, not just those who inherited it from a warrior culture. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her jacket again and pulled out a small flask. "Figured you'd need this after today," she said, offering it to him. Zyl'ax stared at the flask. "What is it?" "Whiskey. Human tradition. You offer someone a drink after they've learned a hard lesson." She smiled slightly. "Helps take the edge off existential paradigm collapse." Despite everything, despite the humiliation, the shattered certainty, the 40 pairs of eyes watching him, Zyl'ax felt his throat sacs pulse with something that might have been amusement. He took the flask, unscrewed the cap, and took a cautious sip. It burned going down. He managed not to cough. "Terrible," he said. "Yeah, it's an acquired taste," Emma agreed. "Kind of like tactical honesty." Commander Zyl'ax finally found his voice, his cranium ridges cycling through several colors before settling on official business purple. "In light of this educational exchange, the Academy will be implementing a new mandatory course for all advanced tactical students." He cleared his throat. "Human military doctrine, asymmetric warfare, and survival-based tactical innovation. Instructor Johnson will serve as lead instructor, with Commander Zyl'ax as, if he agrees, co-instructor for comparative analysis." Emma raised her coffee thermos. "I accept. Should be fun." "Fun," Zyl'ax repeated hollowly. He took another sip of whiskey. It burned less this time. The senior officers filed out, already deep in discussion. Cadets clustered around data terminals, pulling up human military history archives. The lecture hall emptied slowly, the weight of new knowledge settling over everyone like atmospheric pressure, adjusting to a new normal. Emma started packing up her minimal materials, just the data pad and thermos. Several cadets approached her with questions about tactical case studies, and she answered each one with the same casual competence she'd shown throughout the entire confrontation. "Instructor Johnson," one Caldrith cadet asked nervously, "the Battle of Thermopylae, was that really 300 soldiers holding off hundreds of thousands?" 300 Spartans, Emma corrected, grinning. "Plus about 7,000 other Greek soldiers everyone forgets about. But yeah, they held the pass for 3 days using terrain advantage and combined arms tactics, bought time for Greece to mobilize." She paused. "They all died, though. So not exactly a perfect example of efficiency, but it showed what you can do when you're fighting for something that matters more than honor." The cadets absorbed this like radiation exposure. Slow, irreversible change. Zyl'ax waited until they'd all filtered out before approaching Emma privately. "You could have destroyed me completely," he said quietly. "Exposed me in front of the entire Academy command structure, ended my career. Why didn't you?" Emma looked at him for a long moment. I'm not here to bury anyone, Commander. I'm here to teach you how we survived burying ourselves for thousands of years and still showed up friendly. She shouldered her bag. You're a good instructor who was working with incomplete information. Now you have complete information. What you do with it, that's up to you. She headed for the door, then paused. Besides, you're going to help me teach the new course. I need someone who can translate human doctrine into terms the rest of the galaxy actually understands. She smiled. Consider it penance, if that helps your honor warrior sensibilities. It does, actually, Zyl'ax admitted. Emma laughed, that easy, genuine sound that he was beginning to recognize as distinctly human. Coffee's on me next week when we start planning the curriculum. Fair. Warning, I take mine black with enough caffeine to violate several biological safety protocols. She left, her voice drifting back from the corridor as she greeted someone. Hey, Marcus. Yeah, just finished that thing with the flags. You still on for break? I need to tell someone about Earth's last football season before I lose my mind. The conversation faded into the distance. Zyl'ax stood alone in his lecture hall, staring at the ash stain on his desk. Then he walked to his office and retrieved something from his secure storage locker. A human flag, the real one Emma had mentioned. The one his cadets had found in the cultural display vault. He mounted it on his wall, positioned carefully according to the human display protocols he'd just spent 3 hours frantically researching. The stars on Blue Field caught the light, and for the first time, Zyl'ax looked at them and saw what they actually represented. Not primitive decorations, but the accumulated weight of 10,000 conflicts survived, 10,000 lessons learned, 10,000 generations that fought and adapted and refused to stop existing. A warrior tradition earned, not inherited. He touched the flag's edge with his claw, gentle this time. I understand now, he said to the empty office. And he did. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please, double-check responses.